I feel like I ran from the airport to the hospital, and I run into the wing that they're keeping my dad, and I'm struck with this realization that like a hospital is really, it's not a place to recover. It's like a place to survive, and these people that are like in the same wing as my dad are all brain dead, and it scares me because my dad's not brain dead. My dad's the guy that I like argue with about whether the Durant move was like morally correct or whether you can feel empathy for Sean Hannity. Like this guy can't be brain dead. He had been airlifted over to the hospital because he had fallen off his bicycle and suffered like a massive concussion and had all this brain bleeding. And when you have brain bleeding, what they do is they just test you over and over and over and over again as to whether or not it's better. So they're testing my dad. This is the test they give him. They say, Mr. Greenberg, if you get pulled over by a cop, what are some reasons you might get pulled over? And my dad responded, well, I own a health food store. So to them, they think, oh, his brain injury is really bad. But luckily I was there and I was like, no, that's his personality. That makes logical sense. That he thinks vegans are the most oppressed minority in American culture. He thinks the cop saw him and was like, oh, look at that long hair, I'm gonna feed him a steak. Like this makes logical sense in his head. And I'm there for a week, and the whole time I'm just trying to get him out of the hospital, right? But I'm struggling against these doctors that keep giving him tests or so like at one point I had told my dad that I was like out teaching a workshop, and I had like come back from on the plane, and he was like, oh, these workshops should be taught to nonprofits. And I was like, it's what I do. I teach them to nonprofits. He's like, no, son, I invented this idea. Let me explain it to other people. So I take him out in the wheelchair, and he's wearing his gown backwards because he felt like it should be a bathrobe. We're all very excited about it. I take him out to the butterfly garden, and he's in a wheelchair, and his because he's broken his hip, and his face is just full of like scabs and scars, and they can't like clean it because something with the brain, I don't really know. And we're in the butterfly garden, and he sees these nurses, and he goes, wheel me over, wheel me over. So we get over to these nurses, and he goes, ladies. And they look over at this. My dad typically looks homeless, but like now he's just covered in like scabs, and he goes, ladies, you involved in any nonprofits? The nurses respond, no. And he goes, really? As though it's like their fault that they should be involved. How is somebody not involved in a nonprofit, that form of economy? So I wheel him away, and that gets back to the doctors, and they say like, it seems like he's not recovering, and I keep being like, no, you don't understand, it's not a brain injury, that's just his personality. But the last day, we're supposed to get him out of the hospital, and one of the nurses brings me in, and she says, I'm really sorry, but like the guy who's supposed to give the final test to see if he can get out is on lunch break, and when he gets back, and I've just been working so hard, I just start crying, and I'm just like sobbing. And my dad looks up, and he sees me, and he sees the nurse, and he goes, well, what's he doing? What's wrong with him? And she goes, he's advocating for you. And he goes, oh, well, why is he? Ow. And I see what the doctors see. I see that it's tough to tell if it's a brain injury or if this is just personality. A couple of years ago, I went back home to visit my family, and I was taking those tests, those like online, those online tests when you're like feeling down about yourself, and you're like, I need to understand who I am. What are those called? The autism spectrum diagnostic exams. And so we took it as a family. Like, what I mean by that is we all decided to come to consensus on each question. There was one question that we all very much came to consensus on very quickly. Question was, you know when to apologize correctly. And we all just went, strongly disagree, very much disagree. I feel like becoming an adult, people often say you're just going to become your parents. But I think what I realize is like becoming an adult is you're just going to become everything you resent. And that just strongly correlates with your parents. That's my people. I don't know. Thank you.